I'm going to show you how to do block 8 in the Navigator quilt. Isn't that pretty? Let's get busy. For block 8, the supplies that you're going to need is you're going to need a small piece of your fabric 1 and your fabric 2. You will need 2 rectangles of your fabric 7, 2 small ones, and then you will need a large rectangle fabric 7. And the exact sizes are on your instructions depending on what block size you're using. You will also need a spool of water-soluble thread and a rotary bobbin thread. And you will need thread that matches your fabric 7 and a thread color of your choice for the quilting that's on there. So you can see, I'll show you once again what the finished block looks like. So let's go to the machine and start sewing. For step 1, I have embroidery bobbin thread in the bobbin and water-soluble thread in the needle. I have in the hoop my battleizer, and I'm going to just sew a placement stitch. And this placement stitch will show me where to put the wool. Now, adding the wool just adds extra dimension to your quilt. It's an optional thing that you can do. I'm going to choose to put it in mine because I really like the look of it. If you decide that you are not going to stitch this or add the wool to it, then you're going to skip the next step, which is right now, and that's step 2 of adding the wool, and you would just go right to step 3. So for step 2, if you decide to do it and add the wool for some dimension, you will first prep your wool by pressing in about 1/4 of an inch with your iron on the edges. You will also have to make sure that your presser foot is raised to the machine's highest possible height, and that'll help prevent the foot from getting caught in the wool. So it's going to sew a zigzag stitch, and I'm going to continue with the water-soluble thread. Step 3, we still have our water-soluble thread in the needle, and the machine will sew placement stitches to show where our fabric will go. And all you have to do is just make sure that your presser foot, once again, is still in that highest position. And sometimes you just need to push the wool down ahead of the needle just to make sure the foot doesn't get caught. For step 4, I have my little piece of fabric 2, and I'm going to cover up this section over here. And again, with water-soluble thread, we're going to sew a tack down for our first piece of fabric. And now that I have that tack down, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut the fabric on the inside of the block so that there's 1/4 of an inch seam. And any fabric I have on the outside edges of the block, I'm going to leave that in place. For step 5, you'll need to put regular sewing thread in the needle only, still working with embroidery bobbin thread in the bobbin, and you're going to take your little rectangle of fabric 1 and you're going to place it right sides down with the raw edges even right here, right over fabric 2, and you're going to put it back on the machine and the machine will sew a seam. So let's do that. So then for step 6, we're going to flip our fabric 1 right side up. You can see that. Flip it right side up, and the machine will sew a tack down stitch, and we're going to leave the same thread in the needle. Smooth out that fabric. So we'll just flip the fabric, finger press it, and let the machine sew the tack down stitch. going to trim the fabric on the inside of the block, trim it to a 1/4 inch seam, and any fabric on the outside of the block, just like before, I'm going to leave that there. For step 7, we are going to continue with our same thread in the needle. You're going to take your fabric 7 and you're going to lay it right side down. It's 4 inches by 3 inches, at least for the 7-inch block, but whichever side is the shortest, that's the side that you're going to lay raw edges even with your fabric number 1. And so you're just going to lay that there, and the machine will sew a seam. Step 8, you're going to flip that fabric 7 right side up. You're going to smooth it out and you're going to give it a little finger press right at the seam, and then the machine is going to sew a tack down stitch, and we're going to still use our neutral thread. For step 9, you're going to take your second piece of fabric 7, you're going to take the shorter side of it and you're going to lay it right side down with the raw edges even, and you're going to sew a seam on the other side. For step 10, you're going to again flip the fabric right side up, smooth it out, finger press, and the machine will sew a tack down stitch using the same thread. And now we can cut the fabric on the inside of the block. At the top here, we can cut it to a 1/4 inch seam allowance. For step 11, you're going to need your large rectangle of fabric 7. And on the long side, you're going to take it and you're going to fold it in half, and you're going to finger press it so that you can find the center of that edge of the fabric. And then you're going to take the fabric and you're going to lay it right side down, raw edges even with what we just stitched out. So you'll just take that folded edge where you found the center and you'll line that up with the center of what we just stitched out, those 2 little points. And again, with neutral thread, we're going to sew a seam. For step 12, if you are adding your backing fabric while it's in the hoop, this would be when you would do that. So you would just take the appropriate size square fabric and you would just place that centered right over your block. So you would make sure it's even on both sides. And then with water-soluble thread, you would go back to the machine and attach that. But before you do, you would also need to, on the front, while it's in the machine, just flip this large piece of fabric 7 right side up and smooth it out, and then finger press that seam. And at the same time, the machine will sew the backing to the back of the hoop and also tack down this fabric. And I am not going to back it while it's in the hoop, so I'm going to remove this. So the only thing I need to do, if you're going to back it section by section after it's sewn together, skip that backing, flip this fabric, finger press it, and then sew the tack down with water-soluble thread. For step 13, you can put whatever color you want in for this step, and it's going to sew some beautiful quilting on here. If you already have your backing on, you will need to match your bobbin thread. The other thing you will need to do is you will need to turn off your automatic thread cutter if you have one. And also, before you begin stitching, you will need to do needle down, needle up, and bring your bobbin thread to the top. And that is going to help you have a much cleaner and neater looking back. So then when you're ready to stitch and you have your bobbin thread pulled up, go ahead and hit the start button and take a few stitches and then cut your thread tail and let her go. The last step in the design is to put thread in the needle that matches your fabric 7, and it's going to sew some more quilting. So here's my completed block 8 right out of the hoop. So you will trim all 4 sides of this using the trimmer by George. Here is a completed trimmed block. You can see the back, and again I didn't add the backing fabric, but you can see how we trimmed all the bulk away using the metal edge of our trimmer by George. So do that on all 4 sides of your quilt block, and we'll see you for the next video. Bye.